Hi, and welcome to our audiobook series brought to you by Burgapoly Publishing. Let the journey begin. Today we are presenting
Chapter 12, Betrayal. John's voice came from the back. Storage room's clear. Let's grab what we can and go. Footsteps before a shadow appeared in the doorway. Hey guys! John spun, hand instinctively going for a weapon that wasn't there. Dave stepped into the room and Amaryllis, Victor, and Rupert were behind him. John exhaled, tension easing. Good to see you're still breathing. Tom grinned. Yeah, we thought something ate you. John nodded toward the back door. The others are next door. We're here grabbing food. Victor rubbed his neck. We saw you run into trouble earlier. We had no choice but to stay hidden in one of the other buildings. Smart move, John said. Dave surveyed the kitchen, his gaze settling on the bloodied wall. You guys all right? Tom waved a hand. Yeah, why wouldn't we be? John smirked. Had a little trouble with a guy hiding in here. Some of our pets took care of him. Tom added, and then they tried to eat us. Dave whistled, shaking his head. Glad you guys survived. His eyes lingered on the crimson stains. For a moment, no one spoke. Then John clapped his hands. All right, let's load up on supplies and get out of here. No one argued, because in the silence beyond the walls, the jungle still listened, and the real hunt wasn't over yet. Yeah, we're all okay, John said, scanning the group. Just in time to help us haul some of this food back next door. Tom pried open a cupboard. Lucky for us, the dinosaurs figured out how to knock down doors, but not open them. John ducked back into the storage room, emerging with a couple of boxes. Here, fill these up with whatever looks edible. I'll check the rest of the building. Tom and Amaryllis worked fast, pulling supplies from the shelves. Dave, Victor, and Rupert rummaged through the storeroom. John returned holding something heavier than food. He raised his hands, displaying 2 guns. Tom grinned. Now that's what I'm talking about. Dave's eyebrows lifted. Yeah, we're going to need those. John shoved the guns into one of the boxes. Let's move. He cracked the door open, scanned the compound, then nodded. All clear. They moved quickly, slipping back into the other building. Chi met them at the door, shutting it firmly behind them. Everything okay? Tom set his box down on a chair. Yeah, and look who we found. How'd you guys make out? Valerie asked, pulling a box from Amaryllis's hands. Dave exhaled. We found a bunch of equipment stored at the end of the camp. Not much else, Victor admitted. We spent most of the time hiding, Amaryllis added. We saw what they did next door. We're lucky they left us any food, Tom quipped. Valerie smirked. It wasn't half eaten, was it? Tom grinned. We wiped the dinosaur slobber off. Should still be good. Chi rolled her eyes and shoved him. Don't believe anything he says, Valerie. Valerie shrugged. Honestly? Still eating it. Chi smirked. I'm hungry, but I'm not sure I'd eat food covered in dinosaur spit. Tom pulled packages from the boxes, setting them on the table. Dig in, everyone. As they ate, John set the guns on the table. Tom gnawed on a strip of dried meat. This jerky's pretty good. Scott chewed thoughtfully. More than likely, that's dinosaur jerky. Tom stopped mid-bite. He squinted at the strip of meat. How can you tell? Scott shrugged. Hard to say, but considering this planet's dominant life forms, it's a safe bet. Tom blinked, then shrugged. Still tastes good. He took another bite. John looked at Chi and Scott. Any luck figuring out which way we need to go? Scott nodded. Yeah, before the battery died, we pinpointed our location. We're about 10 kilometers from a pumping station. Tom exhaled. That's the easy part. The hard part is getting there without being eaten or shot. John frowned. How far is it? 10 clicks, Chi repeated. Valerie nodded toward the table. I see you found a couple of guns. Do they work? John inspected one. Haven't tested them yet. We're not going anywhere tonight, John added. Let's look around, see what we can use. We'll test the guns while we're at it. Chi folded her arms. My father made me take shooting courses. I might be able to help. Tom smirked. Maybe you can teach John here how to actually use one. John rolled his eyes. If I remember correctly, you weren't any better with it. Chi grinned. He didn't even hit the dinosaur when he threw it. The room erupted in laughter. John shook his head. All right, after we eat, let's split up. Scott, Valerie, and Amaryllis. Go back next door, Grab more food and check for medicine. Scott nodded. The rest of us will scout the compound for anything useful, John continued. They finished eating and prepared to head out. Tom cracked the door open, peeked outside, then turned back. All clear. John adjusted his grip on one of the guns. Let's make sure nothing came back since the food might attract more visitors. They crossed to the neighboring building, moving cautiously. Once they secured the structure, John, Chi, Tom, Victor, and Rupert traced the compound's back wall. The smoldering building had finally burned out, its blackened skeleton still smoking. They slipped between the buildings, moving toward the spot where they'd first encountered the giant dinosaur. Chi suddenly crouched. Here's the gun you threw, she said, picking it up. She aimed at a pile of crates and fired. The explosion sent shattered wood flying. Tom jumped. Whoa, easy there. Chi smirked. It works. John exhaled, rubbing his temple. Good. Now we have another gun. Tom shook his head, still blinking. A little warning next time? John peered around the edge of the building. All right, let's find another vehicle. Dave scoffed. Would have been nice if the others hadn't taken off without us. They crept toward the area where Dave's group had first found their cars. Tom kicked at a rusted wheel. I don't see any working cars, just this thing. John frowned. A small wheeled transport sat in the dust. It was an old vehicle, its paint corroded, its tires worn. A land vehicle. Tom yanked open the door and slid into the driver's seat. Start, he commanded. Nothing. Start, he repeated, waving his hands dramatically. Piece of junk. Chi leaned against the door. That's not how these work. Tom sighed. Fine, you try. Maybe these only respond to female voices. Chi rolled her eyes, slid into the seat, and examined the controls. If this is like my dad's old car, she reached beneath the wheel. It's not voice-activated, it's manual. She twisted something. The engine coughed and roared to life. Loud. Tom jumped back. What? Chi shouted over the deafening noise. My dad taught me how to drive these. Tom cupped his ears. What? The engine choked and then died. Chi exhaled. I used to go out into the country with my dad. Tom blinked. Oh. John climbed into a second vehicle. He repeated Chi's steps, and the engine rumbled to life, quieter than the first. Chi frowned. How'd you know how to do that? John smirked. I watched you. She raised a brow. Quick learner. Tom huffed. What kind of fuel does this thing take? Dave checked the spare tank. He sniffed the air. Smells like alcohol. John checked the gauge. Half full. He shut off the engine. Should be enough to reach the city. Chi folded her arms. If we can make it through the jungle. John tightened his grip on the wheel. We're about to find out. Dave looked at John. The only problem is, we all won't fit into one car. One flies, the other stays on the ground. John exhaled, running a hand over his jaw. Yeah, I was thinking about that too. His eyes scanned the group. One team takes the flyer, the other takes the land route. Victor crossed his arms. Both are risky. John nodded. We'll decide as a group. See who's comfortable with what. The others murmured in agreement. At least now we have a way out, Tom said. Let's look around and see if we can find anything else useful. They moved toward a nearby building. The interior was dim, dust swirling in the beams of filtered light. Rupert reached up and pulled a backpack from a shelf. This is exactly what we need, he said, turning it over in his hands. John ran his fingers along a short metal pole hanging on the wall. He picked it up and pulled the trigger. A violent arc of electricity snapped at the tip with a sharp crack. John smirked. Oh yeah, these should come in handy. Tom's eyes lit up as he grabbed another one. Oh, definitely. Chi ran her fingers along a helmet with attached night vision goggles. She examined the straps, adjusting the fit. These people were prepared to live out here. Tom scoffed. They weren't prepared for those flying things. A noise, a faint beep. John straightened, eyes narrowing. Where's that coming from? Chi traced the sound, then reached into a crate, pulling out a small handheld device. It's like a comm unit, she murmured, turning it over. A garbled electronic pulse emitted from the speaker, short, rhythmic. Tom frowned. That sounds like some kind of code. John exchanged glances with Chi. Let's bring it back. Maybe Scott can figure it out. They gathered everything of value and returned to the building where Scott, Valerie, and Amaryllis were unpacking supplies. Victor's eyebrows lifted. Looks like you three made out pretty well. Did you find the medical supplies? John asked. Scott nodded, pointing to a stack of supplies on one of the beds. John set the handheld device down. We found this. Any idea what it is? Scott picked it up, turning it over. Some kind of comm unit, he muttered, but I've never seen one like this before. When we turned it on, we heard a pattern, like a transmission, Chi said. Scott turned it on. The coded beeps played again. He listened, his brow furrowing. Could be a homing signal. Tom folded his arms. Considering they were selling people into slavery, maybe it's how they contacted their buyers. Scott nodded, deep in thought. Could be, but... He hesitated. I don't recognize these markings. This might be from a known system, but with those attack drones, this could be something else entirely. Tom scoffed. Humans dominate the galaxy. Who would be stupid enough to attack us? Scott's face remained unreadable. John took a slow breath. We're on the fringes of civilization. If this is an attack, then we're dealing with someone who doesn't want us here. The weight of the moment settled over them. John shook it off first. All right, we move at dawn. He looked at the others. It'll be dangerous out there at night. That reminds me, Dave interjected. We still have the car situation. We'll have to split up, she agreed. One land, one air. How are we deciding that? Valerie asked. A pause, and then Scott turned and strode toward the back door. Where are you going? Valerie asked. Scott didn't answer. Valerie, frustrated, followed after him. We'll be right back. Tom glanced at Amaryllis. What's that about? She shrugged. Scott and Valerie returned, their presence shifting the room's energy. Scott held something small in his hands, the edges worn by time. I found these when we were going through the supplies. His voice carried the weight of discovery, as if unearthing some ancient relic. Chi exhaled sharply, recognition flashing in her eyes. I haven't seen those in a long time. Rupert leaned in, curiosity laced in his voice. What are they? Scott held the deck aloft, the cards fanning out like whispered secrets from another time. Playing cards, people used to play games with them. Tom squinted at the thin paper rectangles as if their purpose eluded him. Games? With these? My father and I used to play when we went on our adventures, Chi said, the memory carrying a nostalgic weight. Go fish. War. Simple diversions for a world that had time to spare. Tom plucked the deck from Scott's hands and turned them over, studying them with narrowed eyes. How do you play games like that with these? She'll show us one day, John interjected, his voice tempered, mind elsewhere. Tom shrugged and handed the cards back. Yeah, okay. Their hands moved automatically as they continued packing, the remnants of a world they barely understood tucked away between supplies of survival. Then Scott lifted the deck again. Before we do anything else, should we draw cards? John looked up, pulled from his thoughts. Yeah, that sounds good. Tom leaned against the wall, fingers tapping idly against his thigh. Face cards for the flying car, numbered cards for the land vehicle. John's gaze swept the room, measuring the expressions, the silent agreements. Does that sound fair to everyone? A murmur of assent followed, so Scott stepped forward, walking between them, each drawing their fate from the shuffled unknown. Tom held his card aloft first. A card with a face. John turned his over. Mine's a number card. Same, Dave muttered. Victor flipped his card, mirroring Dave's. Yep, number 2. Valerie smiled faintly, eyes flicking toward Scott. Mine's a face card. Scott turned his over and frowned. Number. Chi hesitated, then glanced at John. Face. Amaryllis and Rupert both revealed their cards, which were numbered. Tom ran a quick tally, his tone shifting as the realization settled in. That makes it 6 for the land vehicle, 3 for the flying car. He frowned. That won't work. Valerie exhaled, crossing her arms. Maybe we should draw again? Scott rubbed the back of his neck. I'll just put in 5 face cards and 5 numbered ones this time. Valerie arched an eyebrow. Why didn't you think of that before? Scott's ears turned red. Because I didn't think of it, he muttered. Another draw. The result shifted slightly. John and Amaryllis now held face cards. She let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. Then Dave stood up. The air changed, an imperceptible tension creeping between them. This isn't fair. Tom turned, caught off guard by the edge in Dave's tone. What do you mean? Dave's movements were deliberate as he took a step back, closer to the pile of gear. I found the car. His voice hardened. I should decide who gets to go in it. John straightened, shoulders tensing. We're trying to be fair about this. No need to get upset. Dave's hand closed around something. Metal, cold, loaded with intent. He lifted the blaster and aimed it at them. The world contracted. Chi inhaled sharply. Valerie's fingers twitched at her side, instinctively reaching for something. Anything. I'm not going to be eaten by dinosaurs because of a damn game, Dave spat. Whoever goes by land isn't going to make it. I can tell you that right now. Tom's voice was measured, testing the space between words. And what about the flying things? Dave's eyes flickered, jaw tightening. They're long gone. His gaze swept the room, seeking allies. Come on, Victor. Rupert. You're with me. His voice softened, coaxing. Amaryllis, you too, if you want. Victor and Rupert moved without hesitation, their choice made before the words left Dave's mouth. But Amaryllis hesitated. She stood there, caught between the weight of survival and the pull of morality. Fine, Dave sneered, seeing the indecision in her eyes. Stay with them if you want. Amaryllis exhaled sharply, looked down, and took a single step toward Rupert. This is crazy. Dave backed toward the door, his grip on the blaster unwavering. Now we'll be on our way. His voice was ice. Good luck. You're going to need it. Victor and Rupert disappeared through the threshold first, their movements hurried, furtive. Amaryllis lingered for a second longer, then stepped after them, her silhouette swallowed by the dim light beyond the door. The silence they left behind was suffocating. Tom let out a low whistle, shaking his head. Didn't see that coming. Valerie exhaled, something raw in her voice. What's his deal? John moved. The decision had already been made. The weight of inaction unbearable. He grabbed a blaster and strode for the door. I'm going after them. Wait, Chi called, running after him. Wait, John, let them go. Chi's voice was not a command nor a plea. It was the voice of someone who saw the inevitable unfold and knew that chasing shadows in the night would only end in regret. She ran after him, her steps urgent but unwilling to break into a full sprint because she knew what would happen next. Tom grabbed another blaster, his instincts not quite as certain as Chi's, but his body followed anyway. Outside, the night had swallowed them whole. John was already moving between the buildings, a silhouette barely distinguishable from the darkness that pressed in around them. Chi and Tom spotted him just as he reached the edge of one structure. Then suddenly he dropped. A controlled fall, a roll, his body responding before his mind could catch up. Blaster fire. Bolts of light cut through the air, searing paths of violence where he had just stood. Chi and Tom froze, pressing themselves against the cold surface of the building. Their breath slowed. Their ears, once dulled by the stillness of the night, now pulsed with every sound. The hum of a distant creature, the whisper of wind through broken structures, and the distinct energy crackle of a charged weapon. John reached around the corner, his blaster an extension of his will. He fired. Silence. He inhaled, exhaled, and then risked another glance. The car, their stolen chance at survival, sped toward the gate. Its lights, cold and indifferent, illuminated the crude walls of their makeshift refuge as it hovered just low enough to slide beneath the cage. John raised his weapon, instinct screaming for retaliation, but his muscles betrayed him. What was the point? Slowly, deliberately, he lowered his blaster. The car slipped through the entrance, its taillights swallowed by the night. Chi and Tom moved beside him, standing shoulder to shoulder in the absence of their enemies, their betrayers. Together, they watched the dust settle in the artificial wind left in the vehicle's wake. Tom exhaled sharply. What was that all about? John's expression was unreadable. his mind still dissecting what had just transpired. I don't know. Maybe Dave got scared. Chi crossed her arms, shifting her weight. I'm scared, and I'm not acting like that. John's gaze flickered toward her. There was truth in her words. There was always a choice in fear, whether to let it consume you or to wield it like a blade, cutting away weakness. Yeah, he muttered. They're gone now. There's nothing we can do about it. His words hung in the air, less of a statement and more of an attempt to convince himself. They turned back. The weight of failure pressed against their backs as they walked in silence. Their bodies heavier now, their steps less confident. By the time they reached the building, Valerie and Scott were waiting. No words passed between them, only silent acknowledgement, an understanding that something had shifted. Inside, John and Tom moved with mechanical precision, securing the door. The small act felt futile. Tom collapsed onto a seat with an exaggerated sigh. Hopefully, that's all the excitement for the night. Valerie leaned against the wall, arms crossed. Yeah, really, now what? John rubbed his forehead, the exhaustion setting in like a slow, creeping tide. We need to try to get some rest, if we can. Chi sat beside him, knees drawn up, her arms wrapped around them. I don't know if I can sleep now. We haven't eaten in a while, Tom murmured, shifting through a box with absent fingers. His voice was not one of hunger, but of necessity. We should eat. Keep our strength up. John glanced at him, his tone dry, yet edged with exhaustion. We just ate. But time felt warped here, stretched, compressed. Hunger was no longer dictated by the body but by uncertainty. How long before they had to run again? How long before food was more than a convenience, but a weapon against weakness? They forced down what they could, small bites of sustenance more for ritual than nourishment. Then came the slow, methodical preparation, packs filled with everything they deemed essential. However, no one truly knew what that meant anymore. And then sleep. Each of them collapsed into bunks, the air thick with stale earth and the forgotten scent of past inhabitants. Conversation ebbed and flowed, hushed voices against the weight of the dark. In time, their words surrendered to silence. Once filled with quiet murmurs of strategy and survival, the room now held only the sound of breath, slow, deep, rhythmic. But the night does not sleep. John woke to it first. The distant cry of something not human, something old, something born of this world and woven into its predatory rhythm. His mind drifted. Semia, home, a place that now seemed as distant as the stars. He imagined his parents oblivious to the reality their son now inhabited. What would they think if they knew, if they could see? They had sent him here for a future, but the future was now a battlefield, a landscape of choices made in the shadow of survival. He glanced at the dim glow of the lone lamp. Shadows stretched across the room, their shapes distorting against the walls where his companions lay. They had all changed, altered by this place, molded by something beyond mere survival, something elemental. A thought settled in his mind, cold and unwavering. Would they survive? Sleep returned, but it did not come gently. Suddenly, a whisper against the silence. John, wake up. A hand nudged his shoulder, pulling him from uneasy dreams. He stirred, disoriented. What's up? Chi's voice was barely audible, as though she feared giving her thoughts form would make them real. I keep hearing something outside. John frowned, listening. Silence. I don't hear anything, he whispered. Just wait, she murmured. You'll hear it. And then he did. A rustling, quick, deliberate. The sound of movement, not wind nor accident, intention. He sat up, fully awake now. Yeah, he muttered, I hear it. The others stirred, shapes shifting in the dimness as they surfaced from uneasy sleep. John moved, crossing the room to the small window overlooking the next building. The cold glass pressed against his fingertips as he peered into the night. Moonlight painted the world in silver and shadow, and in that eerie light he saw them, small creatures darting between the ruins, moving like whispers in the dark. Chi was beside him now, her breath warm against his shoulder. What are they? John shook his head. I'm not sure. Scott, now fully awake, leaned forward, eyes narrowing. Nocturnal mammals, probably, adapted to move beneath the gaze of larger predators. They wait until the giants sleep. They're scavengers, Tom added, his voice laced with something between curiosity and resentment. Probably raiding the kitchen. There go my dinosaur steaks. Chi almost laughed at the absurdity of it, but the unease remained. Valerie stiffened. She turned toward the door leading to the collapsed front room, fingers pressing lightly against its wooden frame. The moment stretched thin. I think, she whispered, there's one inside. The statement hung between them like a held breath. Scott spoke with quiet certainty. They can smell us. They have to. Their world is darkness and scent. Then a scratching at the door. No one moved. The silence between heartbeats. Tom exhaled sharply, reaching for the electronic prod. I'll fix it. Scott, with the unshakable patience of someone who had seen this play out before, raised a hand and banged once against the door. The sound was sharp and commanding. He let out a deep, guttural growl, a warning in a language older than any spoken tongue. The creature yelped, a frenzied scrambling, a collision with unseen objects, and then retreat. Something born in fear. Scott exhaled. They're skittish. They have to be. A world like this, the weak don't last. Tom set the prod down slowly. That's good to know. John looked up, his mind moving through calculations beyond survival. What time is it? Tom shrugged. We haven't been here long enough to sync to local time. Scott, ever the collector of knowledge, nodded to himself. The planet's rotation is slow, just under 28 hours in a full cycle. A little longer than what we're used to. But time is irrelevant when survival is the only currency that matters. John leaned back against the wall, staring at the door as though it might betray them. It's still dark. We should rest. Whatever's out there, we can't fight it in shadows. Tom sighed, rubbing his hands over his face. I don't know, John. Maybe whatever Scott scared off has an older brother that isn't so skittish.
Thanks for listening to Chapter 12 of Into the 6th Millennium, The Invasion of Zephro. If you enjoyed it, be sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss future audiobooks. You'll find links below to get the book, explore more titles from the series, and grab official merch. We've also included some affiliate links to the tools we use to bring this project to life.